Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. The story I will tell is one that involves other members of my family and can be verified by them. Let me start telling you a bit about myself. My mum is half Cherokee and half French, but we've never met our grandpa on her side, and although she believes in the paranormal, she tries to ignore it. On the other hand, my dad has a mixed heritage of Scottish, English, German and Jewish. He doesn't believe in anything he can't explain with science and logic. Unfortunately, after many years, and due to irreconcilable differences they both had regarding who they were and what they believed, my parents split up when I was 8. Soon after this, my mother then married my stepfather, who is a devout Southern Baptist from Mississippi. As a result, she gave up her native identity and became heavily Christian. Even though my mother and father had many issues, my dad still allowed us to visit my maternal grandma and step-grandpa because he thought they were good folks. They taught us many things about Native American culture, spirituality, stories, and the people. I spent a lot of time with my grandma, and she gave me a chance to learn about Cherokee medicine. She comes from a long line of medicine practitioners and is one herself. Now, years later, at the age of 23, I am also a Cherokee medicine practitioner. So now you know a bit more about me and my background, let's continue. This isn't a story about ghosts, but it falls into the category of the paranormal, as it is not something that happens in one's everyday life. Around 2 years ago, my father, brother and I relocated to a new home in a more rural location than our previous residences. We all embraced the opportunity to be surrounded by nature and be enamoured by the land. After about 3 months of settling in, I made the decision to adopt a puppy and expand the family. This would be the first time that I would be solely responsible for a dog's care. After some time of looking, I found a gorgeous male pup who was a mix of German Shepherd and Pit Bull and already 5 months old. I went to meet him and was instantly taken with him. He was such a kind and gentle soul. He got along great with the cats and was very protective of me. He became my closest companion and was everything I could have asked for in a dog. If you've ever owned a young dog, you know how potty training can be a challenge. Even after being with us for 2 months, he was still waking me up every 2 to 4 hours to go outside. It was tough on my sleep schedule, but it was necessary. However, on one particular night, we had an unexpected late-night visitor. On this night, I was woken at around 2:45 a.m, and I was not ready for it. But nevertheless, I got out of bed, put on the leash, and opened the back door. The cool air hit me as I stepped outside. I sighed and followed my dog out into the yard. He did his usual routine of sniffing around and rolling in the grass, completely forgetting the reason for coming outside. I whistled to get his attention, and he finally did his business. As he crouched down to do his thing, I looked up at the sky to give him some privacy. I noticed that the moon was almost full, but not quite. As I looked around, I realised that it was completely quiet outside, which was unusual for that time of night. Suddenly I felt a shiver run down my spine and my arm hairs stood on end. At the same time, my dog started growling softly and pressed himself against my legs with his tail tucked between them, the hairs on his back raised. When I tried to move away, he leaned against me even harder. I got another chill and decided to see what had caught my dog's attention. When I did, I saw a creature that resembled a coyote. It wasn't unheard of to see one around here, but this one was strange. It seemed different from the others I had seen, and it made me uneasy. What terrified me most was that it was staring right at me. I stood there, frozen, staring back at it, and the moonlight gave me a good look at its features. The animal's coat was patchy, and I could see some bald spots. Its eyes were a bright yellow, not like the red or green gleams you see in a dog's eyes in the dark, but more like the sun. They were intense, almost blinding. As I kept looking, I noticed that its hind legs were longer than a regular coyote's legs, and longer than any kind of dog or wolf I'd ever seen. The legs seemed to have a human-like design, like it could walk on 2 feet if it wanted to. That's when I realised what I was looking at. I scooped up my 60-pound dog while keeping my gaze on the creature. While holding him, I silently recited a prayer I had learned from my Cherokee grandmother. The creature seemed agitated and took a few steps back. Suddenly, a voice that sounded exactly like my grandmother's spoke up and said, "Why would you do that, Mickers?" No one but my grandparents ever called me by that nickname. At that point, I ran for the door with my dog still in my arms and quickly went inside, put him down and locked the door. The commotion woke my brother up and he walked into the kitchen looking irritated. He asked me what was happening and why the dog was barking. I gestured for him to be quiet and turned off the lights. We tiptoed to the living room and turned off the lights there too. Then, as if it were a scene from a horror movie, we saw the shadow of a tall figure in the stained-glass window on the door, illuminated by the bright moon. We were paralysed with fear, and my brother lunged for the doorknob when it started to turn. He grabbed it just in time to lock it. That's when the creature spoke again, this time in my step-grandpa's voice, saying, "Bubba, why don't you let Grandpa in?" My brother turned to me with a horrified expression, and I mouthed the word "SKINWALKER" to him. The creature then began tapping on the glass, and we retreated to my bedroom, ignoring the knocking. The following night, at around the same time, the tapping sound became louder. We were in the living room and praying to Unetlanhi, the creator of all things in Cherokee mythology, hoping the noise would stop. As we prayed, the tapping grew into knocking and then pounding, which continued to intensify. The commotion must have disturbed my father, because he came down the stairs annoyed. We had informed him earlier in the day about the previous night's incident, but he had not taken us seriously, assuming it was one of my siblings' friends being a jerk. Seeing the figure in the window agitated him even more, and he charged straight towards the door. We screamed at him not to open it, but he did it anyway. To our surprise, the creature didn't attack him, but seemed scared and immediately scampered on all fours down the street. My father's expression went pale, and he took a few steps back in shock. After locking the door, we all went to bed. The following day, we had a discussion about what had happened the previous night. I told my father about the skinwalker, which is what the natives call the creature we saw. They're not usually part of Cherokee folklore, but my grandparents had told us about them. My dad, who was sceptical, dismissed it as something he simply couldn't explain. Later on, I went to a local craft store to buy juniper ash, as my grandma had instructed, and sprinkled it around our house to ward off any future encounters with the creature. It never came back, but my dog was forever changed after that night. It was like the whole experience transformed him. He went from being affectionate to being aggressive and erratic. He started attacking anyone who wasn't a woman. We tried to train him over the next year and a half, but nothing worked. After an incident where he finally hurt my brother, making him bleed, we decided it appropriate to find him a new home. Fortunately, he's now with a couple who are both female, and he seems much happier. However, even now, as he did for the full year and a half after that encounter, I'm sure he still refuses to go outside at night. I haven't brought up the name of this creature very often throughout this account, as it is believed to bring bad luck in my native culture.